Thanks for joining us as author Dwayne Anderson presents the diagram, You Can Receive Forgiveness of Sins. In this video, we'll be looking at page 1 of this diagram. The link for the diagram can be found in the description below. Join us now as Dwayne teaches through the last section of And Sin Entered.
In Genesis 3:6 we see that it says, "So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. She also gave to her husband with her, and he ate." Here we see what happens as Satan tempts in the 3 ways he can tempt. Lust of the flesh. She saw that the tree was good for food. She saw it was good for food, even though she's been told this is the only tree you can't eat its fruit. She's going to go ahead and eventually eat it because she's being tempted by Satan. She's also tempted in the 2nd way. It says it was pleasant to the eyes. This is the lust of the eyes. We see that then the 3rd thing, it was a tree desirable to make one wise. And so as she saw that it was a tree desirable to make one wise, well, Satan had said that they'd be like God. She wanted to be like God. That's pride, because none of us can be like God. Then it says she also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. Here we notice a very interesting thing. Where was Adam? Well, he was right there with her, but he did not protect her from the temptations of Satan. God gives us one another to protect us and to warn us about the things that are evil, so that we can have the strength of the Lord and ask the Lord to give us His strength not to yield to those temptations. But Adam just kept quiet. Instead, he just ate the fruit with her. He knew what God had said, and he knew that God had told him not to eat of that fruit, but he went ahead and ate it anyway. And so we see that he's the one who is held accountable for sin. And Romans 5:12 says, "Wherefore as by one man sin entered the world, and death by sin, and so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned." Adam made a choice based on knowledge, and he was not deceived. And I think that's a very key thing, because it shows us that man, when he tries to do things in his own strength, will sin and respond to the desires of the flesh, desires of the eyes, and the desire to be like God. In Genesis 3:7 it says, "Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves coverings." Here we see suddenly they knew what evil was. They had sinned, and now they're going to experience the consequences of sin. First thing that we see is they knew that they had sinned. Their eyes both of them are open, but they both knew that they were naked. And as they knew that, they decided they better make a covering. And they thought, well, here's some big leaves. We can make a covering that will cover us. And as they made that covering, they could sew those leaves together. The only problem is, when sin entered the world, those leaves also dried up quickly. And as they dried up, they would just shrivel up. Here we see that what man does, he tries to cover sin. And it's just like young children. You don't have to tell them when they've done wrong. On many things, they know what was wrong because you've told them before, but they got caught doing it. Well, here we see Adam. He knew it was wrong. He experienced something he had never experienced before. It says the eyes of both of them were opened. Not only that, suddenly they knew they were naked. And they're going to feel guilt, as we'll see as we go on through these verses. It says, and so they tried to cover up their fear and guilt and shame. And it says they sewed fig leaves together, made themselves coverings. So they're trying to use something that will cover their sin and hide their sin from God, which they cannot do.
You have been watching Dwayne Anderson review part 3 of the section, And Sin Entered, from the diagram set, You Can Receive Forgiveness of Sins. Please join us for the next video in this series.